Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Well, good afternoon everyone, and welcome back to Super Sunday here on Apex Racing TV and part 2 of the Weekend Warriors, that being the Spec Racer Fords. My name is Ron Mullins. Alongside me here in the commentary booth is Charles Bichelle, and in the virtual production hall we have our old buddy Josh Wilkie. Today we're on an oddball circuit, that being the New Hampshire Motor Speedway road course. It's a strange circuit for sure, and pretty much nothing like the other races we've seen this season, especially compared to the Nordschleife we saw last time at. And now, Charles, you do have some experience calling some races here, that being the race here with the Spec Racer Fords last season here at the New Hampshire road course. So would you like to give me a bit of a crash course on racing here at this strange roval?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know what the problem is, Ron. It's just like the Daytona road course, except it's on a 1-mile track. I mean, it's to be fair, this is only like the third time that they've had official races here on the road circuit, and so it's just a bit of an outlier, not even for us, but for the drivers as well, because they just don't run this. But yeah, it's a pretty straightforward road course. It's very tight. There's certain parts of the track that remind you of other tracks. So this section here, obviously, coming down into this corner, lots and lots of banking to help you get around there, and it's a very Summit Point feel here as you're going through the parking lot, through the trees. Just kind of got that Summit Point kind of feel to it. But it's a pretty straightforward little road course. It's fun. Like I said, it's going to be a challenge because, not even, the regulars here race this a lot because it just doesn't come up on the schedule very much. So it's going to be a very interesting race to call.
We are actually having a conversation, the three of us, it being me, Charles, and our producer Josh, who you usually see out on track here. However, he is here in the production hauler for this broadcast, and Josh was kind of half joking, half being serious about the fact he was kind of glad that he wasn't racing here just because of how tricky this combination is. There are many trouble spots on this track, many sections they're going to catch these drivers at. Just the ones that I could bother listing are turns 1 and 2 with that quick switchback. This corner here, turn number 4, that's going to be tricky because that exit there, you have that tire barrier sticking out, and it being an older circuit here on iRacing, the tire barriers are quite sticky, so the super glue covered tire barriers may play a role here in this race. Turn number 6 as well, a very inviting corner with more banking on that one turn than they have on the actual oval here at New Hampshire, so it's a very inviting corner, but we may see some drivers overcook it coming through there. Speaking of overcooking it, coming through turn number 9 that we just saw Joao Tabino go through, if you overcook it, you're going to hit the outside of the the NASCAR back straightaway there, and actually some of the advertisement boards there, so that would not be ideal for a driver to have that happen there in this race. I think we may actually ride on board and touch on some of the sections of this track which are a bit of a pain in the butt while we still have about 8 minutes left to go here in this qualifying session. Turn 1 and 2, you're trying to spot that curb there on the inside turn number 1, and it's like trying to thread the eye of a needle with the needle attached to a Saturn V rocket traveling at escape velocity. You just cannot do it. It's so tricky to try and sight that curb, which is gray, on a track surface which is gray. So it's really, really tough going through there, and Joao Tabino proves that coming through turn number 4, about to enter turn 5 there, taken for a trip through the grass. But man, this has been a very dramatic season the Spec Racer Fords have been thus far, and I think we should probably touch on the championship points while we're still here in this qualifying session. Have about 7 and a bit minutes left to go here, actually a little bit less than that. We'll go through the championship standings here in just a few moments time, and I think, Charles, I'll let you touch on these.
Sure. So in Spec 1, Joao Tabino is leading, Avandro Dantas in second, Jason Green in third, Jeff Jacobson in fourth, Claudio Gardini in fifth, Simon Mayer sixth, Dudu Castro in seventh, our previous champion, Andres Bertoni, coming off that win last week at Murderburg Ring, is up to eighth, Trenton Kramer in ninth, and Bobby West rounds out your top 10. Still very early in the season, and it's still a very tight battle up at the front.
Moving on to S2 now, it's Wilson there at the front. That's only 4 points separating himself and Paul Jackson. That is incredibly close between those two. Philip Berry there in P number 3 off the back of a win at the Nordschleife in the S2 category. Then it's Telker there in P number 4 and Sean Vincent rounding out your top 5. That is really close there at the front of the S2 category, and at an oddball track, we may see that get shuffled up quite a lot. Then the Masters, oh my god, talk about tight. Tom Gradwell's leading, 160 points scored on the board right now. Only 1 ahead of Burkett there in P number 2. 1 point separating the Masters category, and even just 7 points separating the top 3 in the Masters class right now. Brad Cathcart, who scored the victory in the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors earlier on this afternoon. He'll look to try and ride that momentum here at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway, and wow, incredibly close stuff, Charles. I know we're fairly early into the season, but what do you think is a championship battle that you're really keeping your eyes on?
I mean, it's Castro's had a couple of not great races. We had a big incident at the end of the race last week at Nürburgring, and gave Bertoni the win. The man who never qualified on pole, and took the race victory. So yeah, it's every point counts. So it's just going to be basically is how consistent can you be for the rest of the season? Can you just stay up there battling for podiums week in and week out? And that's going to be the difference in who wins the championship this year, because it's really anybody's trophy to win at this point.
Well, I think the old saying in the world of racing, that is to finish first you have to finish, really rings true here with the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors. And looking at the schedule that we have of events, this one being here at New Hampshire, the 4th round of the season, I think this is one of the trouble spots that's going to catch many drivers at this track, this race just period. I think to actually just see the checkered flag and keep your car clean, you'll probably be looking at decent top 20 results if you just keep it on the road, as we see Bobby West going for a detour off into the ether. I think he's trying to drive into Vermont there. May have gotten lost a little bit there. He's now in the parking lot there. So Bobby West taking a little bit of a detour. Currently P4 here in this qualifying session with not a whole lot of time left to go. You can see Panero there at the front. Not a whole lot of time separating himself and Dudu Castro there in P1 and P2. That is incredibly close stuff there. Castro now in the pit, so he's going to hope to try and get some more laps on the board between now and the end of this qualifying session coming up in a few moments time. But you can see also there the pit exit is going to be that's going to be another section that catches many of these drivers at. Just seeing the pit exit, the fastest line on pit exit is immediately aiming for the apex of turn number 2, which is good if you're coming out of the pits, but not good if you're approaching a car coming out of the pits at very high speed. And even the pit entry as well. You're veering off and have to enter the normal pits for the NASCAR oval, and there you're basically the line between entering the pits and hitting the apex is probably about 3 or 4 feet. So here at this track, I mean, there's so many sections that are going to catch these drivers at. I think while we're still running aboard Jason Green, that inside, that's a killer curve. That's going to catch many drivers at. But Charles, what do you think is going to be the pothole that's going to hurt many of these drivers here tonight?
Well, it took us at the very end of the race for somebody to hit that tire, that water barrel barrier right there that protects the drivers from the end of the pit road wall. So that we'll be looking out for that. Yeah, you're right. Pit exit is going to be very, very treacherous for both the people leaving the pits and the cars on track. To be honest, turn 4 is going to be a really good place to make a late braking pass, but the exit of that corner is so tricky. We saw several drivers in the grass on the right-hand side from where they just over-rotated the corner. And it just basically took them up on the top of that hill, and they had a nice view of the track. Unfortunately, they weren't on it. So turn 4 is going to be one of those to look out for as well. You talked about that curb. That curb, I caught a few people out last season as well. And then, of course, we're back around to the end here of the lap, and that notorious, water barrel wall there that you have to navigate. It's you don't want to be fighting with somebody too wide, because it's just an open invitation for them to squeeze you. And if you're on the inside and just let you stop right there and be the end of your race.
Really, at this track, I think overtaking zones are, well, pretty much non-existent. The only real heavy braking zone, besides turn number 1, where, again, that corner, very tricky to just go through there single file, let alone side by side. So I don't think we'll see many overtakes. Heading into turn 1, turn 4, you outlined it there, Charles, may be one of the only overtaking opportunities on this track. It's a heavy braking zone coming out of turn 3, and although you aren't running on the NASCAR oval and you have to take the detour, actually, no, Marco Pinero looking to try and run the NASCAR oval coming through turns 1 and 2 there. Dantas, you see him running the line there on the inside. You're not carrying a whole lot of speed when you have to slow up into turn number 4 here in just a few moments time. However, it is a very heavy braking zone. It's a decent overtaking opportunity. However, we may see some people pink their competitors there into those sticky outside tire barriers. We'll just have to wait and see how these drivers try and manage the mistakes, manage overtaking each other, and also manage to just stay alive here. This is a really tricky combination, a tricky course. It's an old school one as well. I'll have to fact check myself to see when exactly this road course was first built. However, it's definitely not built to modern safety standards even today, even though the scan was probably back in the early 2010s, the late 2000s. Very early days of iRacing when this track was scanned and implemented into the game. But even today, the track is pretty much roughly the same, besides a little bit of asphalt runoff in the NASCAR section of the course. This is still really challenging, and we're going to see plenty of drivers get caught out here in this 40-minute race we have upcoming.
Yeah, for sure. There's three configurations of this road course. I think this is probably my least favorite. I think the two, what they call the North Oval and the South Oval, where you're taking either turns 1 and 2 of the NASCAR circuit or 3 and 4, I think lends itself a little more to some higher speeds and some better passing opportunities. But these cars and these drivers are going to have fun out here while they're racing, and they're going to race hard, as they always do. And then at the end, there's a couple of good, nice jumps that they can take to release some frustrations they may have gained during the race. So we're looking out for that as well.
Now, the checkered flag has come out here in this qualifying session. We're just waiting for some more stragglers to finish up their lap times. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we still have a little bit of a quirk here with this track, whereby we can't have rolling starts, I believe. Was that the case here last time out? I believe it was. We had standing starts here in the Spec Racer Fords, which aren't very common outside of the officials. You see them here in the Weekend Warriors. We always have rolling starts. However, last season that wasn't the case, so I think that may be the case here as well. So hopefully,
correct. We'll see.
We may have to gun through this as quickly as I can. I think the qualifying session has wrapped up. We're going to get the starting grid and try and go through it as quickly as I can. So I'm going to crack my knuckles and really go at it. We have Marco Pinero grabbing a pole position. Dudu Casher there in second. Joao Tobino in third. Bobby West in fourth. Evandro Dantes there in fifth. Favini, the driver from Sweden, rounding out your top six. Jason Green in seventh. Frister there, the top of the Masters drivers in P number 8. And that's Claudio Godino there in P number. Claudio Gradini, my apologies, in P number whatever it was, and then you can see the rest of the field there are all kinds of, he was in P9, Kabanka in P10, McCain in P11, Gradwell in P number 12. My track map got in the way, I apologize for that. Then we have Simon Mayer in 13th, Kurt Nunez in 14th, Jeff Jacobs in 15th, Jim Brewster in 16th, Trent Kramer in 17th, my lungs are going to be screaming in pain after this, Philip Berry in 18th, Carvalho there in P number 19, Stephen Mitchell, the Danish driver, rounding out your top 20, that's Adam Bradshaw, Marcus Burkett there in P21 and P22, Brad Cathcart there, not a best qualifying result for him in P number 23, that's Charles Vaccaro there in P number 24, and then we can see Manning Grinnan there in 25th, Paul Jackson in 26th, Russell Teckler there in P27, Viglini there in P number 28, that's Wayne Buttermore, Naselli, and Gianni Logan there, rounding out your 31 car field. A little bit of a smaller field, I must say, here for the Spec Racer Fords. I was expecting us to be seeing Spec Racer Ford cars coming around the first corners by the time the rest of the field was coming through turn number 10, but nevertheless, we managed to get through all of those cars within not a whole lot of time. I thank the drivers that are straggling around and not joining the grid immediately. My lungs thank them. But nevertheless, a standing start here in the Spec Racer Fords. You don't see it a whole lot, but the drivers are on their way into turn number 1. It's a pretty good start there from your pole sitter, Panero. He'll be leading the field into turn number 1, unless Dudu Castro has a fantastic run. He tried to get in the slipstream as early as he can. However, turn number 1, trying to overtake there is like trying to pick up antimatter with chopsticks. You simply cannot do it. So it's Marco Panero leading the field coming out of turn 3 for the first time by going onto the NASCAR oval. However, they're going to cut to the infield going into turn number 4, one of the heaviest braking zones on this entire circuit, and whatever the order is here is probably going to stay the same when they go through the outfield. I guess it would technically be called the outfield section here at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. So far, it's still the front runners remaining pretty much the same as they were at the very start. Marco Panero still leading them, Dudu Castro in second, Tabino there in third. Dantes and Bobby West have actually swapped positions. Now it's Dantes in fourth and Bobby West in fifth, but so far, besides them and a few stragglers farther in the back, not a whole lot of shuffling. I will say Nazelli, currently running in P number 22, is up 8 positions from where you start. A fantastic start there from the driver out of Europe.
Yeah, and Naselli got a really good start on that. Jumped up 8 spots. As I think most everybody is just willing to just take their time. We see Castro looking to the inside here, going to make that move. Oh, Panero, oh, almost a touch. Did they touch? Not really sure. But Panero backs out, and Castro takes the spot for the time being.
I needed to take a breath after that.
Yeah.
Good Lord, I am out of gas, but still, I think some of these drivers will hope to God that they're not out of gas. A strategy will play a role here in this race where they're going to be cooking their tires, not a whole lot of straight line areas for them to save fuel, but nevertheless, a draft is still keeping this field stuck together like glue. Currently, the top 11 separated by 3.7 seconds. It is an incredibly close pack that we always have here in the Spec Racer Fords, and it's still Tabino running in P3. He was a driver involved in the front fight in the Formula Fords earlier on this afternoon, and he is still running in a pretty good position right now, entering turn number 9, which I think I emphasized this in the qualifying session. I will say it again, if you go off there through turn number 9, that is basically certain death, so hopefully no drivers get caught out by that between now and the checkered flag. But so far, we haven't seen many incidents. Knowing my luck, I probably just jinxed it. We're going to see a 15-car pileup as we go onto the start-finish straightaway. We're so far so clean for a lot of the field as we start lap 3.
Yeah, it's so far so good. Nice battle up front between Panero and Castro, longtime rivals, and let's hope that that those stay clean as we see him move there. Monticelli, he moving to the inside and picks up another position. He's up 10 spots. He's up to P20 so far.
Yeah, right now, all of these drivers, I think at this stage, besides the exception of Nazelli, who has by leaps and bounds been the highest position gainer so far in this race, up 10 spots from where he started, I think everyone else is trying to take it easy, except for Jeff. Actually, no, that's not Jeff Jacobson. That's Gradwell that went spinning like a top. I heard the tires screeching as he went through turn number 4. I think he had a half spin coming out of the oval and going in that uphill section that will catch out some of these drivers here tonight. I believe that Gladwell was the first one to get caught out by that. We're going to take a look at a replay to see Gradwell going for a spin here in the number 909 car coming through turn number 4. Ooh, I think he ran a little bit wide, got on the power a little bit too early, spins like a top, that section is really slippery. I think maybe the old asphalt here with this old skin of the New Hampshire Motor Speedway may have been the reason why he was struggling for grip coming out of 4.
Yeah, it's just for whatever reason the change in the tarmac or there's a bump there or something, but it caught several drivers out last season as well. And with that same thing, is just you get back on the throttle and there's just no grip and the car just loops around and you're off in the grass.
And so far, we've had some pretty clean racing all throughout the field. Dudu Castro is now in the lead of the race, got by Panera there, so he got a nice clean move done there to take the lead of the race. A driver who's always been one to keep our eyes on is currently leading this race. We may have to take a look at a replay to see what kind of move Castro pulled off, and more importantly, I think from my perspective at least, where in the world he pulled it off. Dudu Castro got the move done to take the lead of the race. We'll take a look at the replay. Where did he get the move done? I think I have a glitched replay here. So I actually know. Here we go. It unglitched itself heading into turn number 1 side by side, making a little bit of contact as they careen their way off the oval into that infield section. I am shocked that Panero and Castro got away with that contact because that was pretty heavy.
Yeah, indeed, and it's not the first time we've seen contact between those two drivers. It's a pretty fierce rivalry between them. So yeah, a little contact, both drivers were able to collect their cars and continue on in the race.
I think that these drivers, right as I said that they were taking it easy, I think they just don't listen to what I have to say for very good reason. It's a reason why I'm in the commentary booth instead of behind the wheel. There's a battle here with Frister there that got a move done. I believe that was Favini that he overtook. Heading into turn number 4 now, Gardini is sliding past Favini there. We've got some very similar sounding names here right towards the tail end of the top 10. Favini, the driver from Sweden, the number 27 car, is looking to find a way to get past the drivers that slipped past him as they went through turn number 4. I think Favini may have overshot his way going into that section this past time by, and that might have been the reason why he lost more than one spot, but nevertheless, a driver from Sweden putting together a decent show right now. However, he's going to look to try and find any sort of way to claw back the positions he lost, I believe, with those moves that were put on him. I believe he's now down 3 positions, which is actually one of the farther dropping drivers besides the likes of Gradwell that had that mistake earlier on, and Adam Bradshaw is now down 5 positions from where he started. Also, Stephen Mitchell down 10, currently running in P30. So some drivers having some mixed race. It's feast or famine for a lot of these drivers. Some of them are cutting through the field, like Nazelli, who's now up 14 positions from where he started, right ahead of Phil Berry here. A few cars up there is Nazelli's number 44. But it's feast or famine for a lot of these drivers. Some of them taking it easy, some of them capitalizing on the drivers taking it a little bit too easy. It's really nice seeing the dichotomy between the drivers that we have right now, and that's McCain, I believe, that spun coming out of turn 4.
Yep, same spot again is that exit of turn 4. So yeah, it's obviously you talked about the Nazelli's. We're going to get a replay here from Josh. As this is looking on Alan McCain as we're coming down into turn 4. Just a nice move to the inside. Trumps contact. He had a little contact there with Favini as well, which didn't help matters. That's a very tight part of the track. It's a good place to pass, but you got to get the pass done. Because if you start going side by side through there, things like that happen.
I think Alan McCain should probably buy a lottery ticket considering how close he was to hitting that inside tire barrier there. Actually, no, it wasn't the inside tire barrier, concrete barrier. That would hurt even more. Speaking of hurting even more, Nazelli is putting a hurting on the field right now. Just got past Jim Brewster. Heading into turn number 1, we weren't expecting drivers to go for moves. Heading through turn number 1, however, Nazelli is proving us wrong. He has cut through the field like a hot knife through butter. Currently running P14 from where he started. It's an impressive run for the driver of the number 44 car right now, and I think I think before the pit stops even come, he could definitely be in the running for a top 10 spot. What do you think, Charles?
Oh yeah, absolutely. When I saw him in the back, it's like, yeah, he's going to make the run through because he's, when he does qualify, he's usually up near the front of the field. So no surprise that he's doing a great job of just navigating the traffic, making moves, and making clean passes on the rest of the field as he gets a little closer to that top 10 every lap.
This is This is interesting what we're seeing right now. We're seeing a contrast of all the different drivers, and speaking of contrast, Nazelli last time by was about a second quicker than all the drivers around him. The gap between himself and Jacobson and Nazelli last time by in terms of lap time was about a second, so Nazelli putting on a clinic right now on the field. We'll see him claw his way through the field. I can imagine that once he breaks into the top 10, it's not going to be over yet. He's about 11.4 seconds back of your leader, Castro, right now. The gap between himself and Panero is actually less than a half a second, so those two actually closing up a little bit. Still the top three covered by less than a second, pretty close there all throughout this field. The main break in the field was between Green and Gardini, currently running P6 and P7. They're separated by about, I'm trying to do the math in my head, about 4 seconds there, so pretty big gap behind Green there. He has a lot of clean air between himself and Gardini, so right now still a nice little pack that we have across this entire field, up towards the front, up towards the tail end of the top 10, and even farther behind we've got some nice packs forming. So I think we got to see what these drivers are going to do strategy wise when it comes to the pit stops, because what we're seeing right now when it comes to strategy on how to push, when to push, and when exactly to go and when exactly to hold back, we're seeing so many different drivers take so many different ideas. Oh no, Nazelli's in the pits. Is he in the pit lane? Is he actually pulling in for a very early stop, or has he actually gone into the wall? No, you can see him in the box there. I think I hear his car revving, so Nazelli is actually just taking a very early stop. This is a strange strategy, I guess you could call it, for Nazelli, the number 44 car. Cut through the field nicely in the opening laps, and now he's coming in early.
It is, and it's just curious. It's really early, and I don't know. I'm going to assume that he's got some kind of software running that's telling him that, hey, we're within the pit window. But just outside of the 10-minute mark, it seems like it's very, very early. But I think we had pretty good fuel mileage at this track last season, if I remember correctly. I think there were drivers that were running up to the 34-minute mark to the end of the race before they came in for their pit. So this may be right on time as the first of the pitters to get the undercut going. And he's already worked his way through the field once. He feels like he's pretty confident he can do it again.
I think right now something that he has going for him is clean air. These Spec Racer Fords are draft monsters, and they also punch a pretty big hole in the air, even though they basically have the aerodynamics of a flying brick. It's more of a wedge or a car that you'd see in a Pinewood Derby, but still these cars punch a little bit of a hole, so dirty air is a tiny bit of a storyline when it comes to these Spec Racer Ford races. So right now Nazelli is in that clean air. He's going to have open track ahead of him. He doesn't have to yield for anyone, so he's going to be pushing like a bat out of hell to try and gain that lap time and go for an undercut. We saw some weird strategies earlier on this afternoon in the Formula Ford race where drivers were going for some undercuts, it wasn't working. Then other drivers went for some undercuts and it actually did work. And then we saw a driver pit with about 10 minutes left to go, and it worked out like a charm as they took the victory overall. So maybe Nazelli is hoping for kind of like the opposite effect, pitting 10 minutes into the race and then being the one to take the checkered flag. We'll just have to wait and see what he does in this race.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's when you're in a battle here, as you were talking about the draft with these cars, basically the front car is an open umbrella, and it's basically pushing all the air out of the way, and so it's very, very easy for that second car. As you can see, Fritcher looking to the inside, going into turn one. Looks like he's going to be able to make that pass stick as he works his way around Gardini. So that second car in line, we saw it, in a lot of the Ray esports series where that when you get these cars with about a half of a second to a 1 second gap between them, it just closes up in a hurry before you even realize what's going on. They're basically nose to tail.
I think the fact that Gardini and Favini are right next to each other on the racetrack is probably the racing gods punishing us, but nevertheless, Favini putting together a decent drive. He's been running solidly in the top 10 all throughout this race, and right now the two cars in front of him were the two that dispatched of him about 5 minutes ago, coming through the 4 and 5 section when he ran a little bit wide. So we'll try and find a way to get past these two. Again, overtaking opportunities are far and few between here at this track of the New Hampshire Motor Speedway road course. So right now I think Favini at this stage, maybe he's just staying in the slipstream and enjoying the fuel numbers that he may be getting, maybe trying to go for a longer strategy. We'll just have to wait and see what he does here. Currently 13 minutes in, lucky number 13 into this race, 12 laps laps in, it's currently Castro leading in the S1 category, leading overall. Panera and Tabino are still right by him on track, so it's still the front three can cover them all with a blanket. I think they've actually been slowly closing in on each other, so I think at this stage, maybe due to Castro, we'll have to see what he does, because we were talking about due to Castro maybe not having the best of fuel numbers on my last Spec Racer 4 broadcast 2 weeks ago at Zandvoort, and then he ended up pitting just the same time as everyone else, and it worked out for him like a treat. So maybe due to Castro is actually doing a little bit of fuel saving, which could be the reason why Panero and Tabino are still still close to him right now, but still the front three incredibly close and actually pulling away, I believe, from West and P4.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the draft is helping them stay together, and I don't think the guys in behind. I think Panero is at the point now that he's like, you know what, I can sit here and fight with Castro, and that's just going to bring Tabino into the fight. It's going to start bringing those other cars into the fight. So I'm going to just stay here, right around in second place. If I find a chance to make a pass where maybe Castro makes a mistake, I'll take that opportunity. But otherwise, I'll sit here and I'll save some fuel, and we'll see how long we go before we have to pit.
We're following Jason Green now, currently running in P5. He's put together a pretty good race. Had an up and down meeting last time out, so I think we'll try and see what he does here on the number 160 car, coming his way through turn number 5 right now. And a few cars behind him is actually your leader in the Masters category. So far, we've got some pretty interesting fights developing right now. I believe at this stage of the race, these drivers may be taking it a little bit easy, saving the fuel, trying to hit those fuel numbers, and just taking it easy to limit your mistakes. That's a corner that I haven't really touched on turn number 8, and you can see how little margin for error they have on the inside of turn number 8. That tire barrier is right there looking to snag a wheel, snag a bit of bodywork, and if it happens, it ends in absolute tears for any of these drivers. Nice, some beautiful camera angles as they go through the turn number 11 and 12 section, which is one that caught me out the first time I drove around here at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway road course, because turn 12, that little I'm trying to figure out what the correct technical term would be. That little protuberance there between turn number 11 and 12, that really caught me out badly. Thankfully, all these drivers getting in a whole lot of practice time, so they haven't been caught out by that yet. This section here, 4 and 5, has caught out the most amount of drivers so far, which is a little bit surprising to me. What about you, Charles?
Yeah, not really. I think 4 and 5 was kind of at least for the, from watching the race last season, it was kind of a known thing. Is there's going to be a few mistakes there, but yeah, I think we saw a lot of issues last time with the North Oval, which was turn 1 and 2 of the NASCAR circuit. I think the change to the full road course configuration has taken a little bit of that out, but we really haven't hit the big pit stops yet. So when the pit cycle really gets started hot and heavy, then we may see a lot more action there through 1 and 2.
Gotta imagine when it comes time for the pit stops, how we may be seeing here in the not too distant future, the main talking point is going to be this turn 1 and 2 section, which is so tight, so technical. I believe that also makes up part of the Legends Oval here at New Hampshire, a very strange Legends Oval, which is more of an egg shape than anything else. But that is a tricky section, and throwing in cars coming out of the pits, that is going to be a real pain in the butt. Brad Cathcart is actually pulled in. He's now down in the pits, currently running P19 overall. Up towards the front, I believe he's running in P6 of the Masters right now, currently the Masters class, led by Frister, P7 overall, and Carvalho is currently the top of the S2 drivers as it stands at the moment. And you can see there Brad Cathcart's car in the pits. It wasn't stationary for very long. We'll see 10.5 seconds in the box there, which, as you can see from the numbers around him, just about the same as we saw from all the other drivers. And I think, yeah, pretty much identical to McCain's time in the pits there. So I think maybe we'll see some drivers be a bit more uniform in their strategy here. I think we're going to see plenty of drivers pit in the next 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think still, even with those, some of them are going to, I think the lead 3 will probably stay out absolutely as long as they can, unless somebody thinks they can make more time with an undercut. But I think, generally speaking, is they're just going to stay out until they have no fuel left. But you will see some of those other cars that, that just run this, and they're not really battling for podiums. They'll just come in about the midway point of the race, take their fuel, get back out on the track, and finish the race off.
Speaking of the undercut, we saw one of the first drivers come into the pits being Nazelli, who even after his pit stop, currently running P20 in this race, is still up 10 positions from where he started. Shows you how great he was. Now up 11 as he get past there of Adam Bradshaw going down the start-finish straightaway. So Nazelli at this point, last time by, he said a 1 minute 10.36, which is pretty friggin' quick as far as I'm concerned. Pretty much all the drivers inside the top 10 are setting about the same lap times. However, the driver separating himself and that top 10 are setting lap times which are quite a lot slower, about a second, teetering to about 0.6 of a second slower than Nazelli right now. So I think he is a man on a mission, has a pretty decent gap between himself and Grinnan there in P number 18 to move up another position. However, once these pit stops come, I think Nazelli may be in a decent shot of actually breaking into the top 5. What do you think, Charles?
That's exactly what I was sitting here thinking about it myself. And I think you're absolutely right. I think he's got a really good chance, unless he gets hung up behind a car for an extended period of time. Yeah, I think top 5's definitely in his future.
We'll just have to wait and see how things shake out here in this race, going through the turn 11, 12, careening his way into turn 13. Oh, he's going to gain another position here. Grinnan is in the pits here, currently running P18, now down to P19, as Nazelli and many other cars overtake him. We'll see how long he's here in the pits, actually in reverse there, so hopefully he's not in reverse by the time his car gets dropped off the jacks. 11.1 seconds stopped in the box there, so a little bit slower. I just noticed that Longan, currently running in P30, was only stopped in the box for 9.4 seconds, so that is a very good time in the pits for him. Certainly Grinnan was the one losing out the most so far, the only driver to be in the pits, be in his box for more than 10 seconds there. So I think maybe he took a little bit more gas to be safe than sorry, but not the fastest pit stop in the world for the Masters driver.
No, it wasn't, and so he's got, you know, a little bit of work to do between now and the end of the race. And I think Naselli's actually getting a lot of benefit from that early stop as he's coming up to this traffic. They're pitting, and they're going ahead and say, you know what, I'm not going to fight this guy. I'm just going to go ahead and pit now. And so Naselli doesn't have to fight with him. He can just keep running hot laps.
That is a fantastic point there, Charles. He is going to have pretty much no traffic to contend with, and with the pace advantage that he has, even the cars that he will deal with, I think will probably just jump out of his way, knowing the massive pace differential they have. However, these Spec Racer 4 drivers will always push you, so I don't think it's going to be too easy for him. We'll just have to see how things shake out for him. I think he's putting himself in a fantastic position, as is Panero. He's running in a great position and has been throughout a vast majority of this race. Started in the lead, however, he got passed by Dudu Castro not very long ago, and he's been running in P2 ever since. Tabino not really pushing the bill here to get past Panero and try and sneak his way into P2. I think Joao Tabino may be saving some gas. We may have to ride on board with him when they go into turn number 4, and I'll listen very carefully to see if he's lifting, well, to hear if he's lifting here, heading to turn number 4 now, going onto the oval again, onto that back straightaway, got lap traffic farther up the road. I'll listen very carefully here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I think he's actually attacking the braking zone. So Joao Tabino not doing as much fuel saving as I was expecting. I think I didn't hear as much of a lift as I was expecting him to do.
No, I mean, it felt like I think you're right. I think he is attacking the braking zones, but I think it's also, I think he is lifting just a little bit. I don't think he's really driving hard into the braking zone. I think he is braking a little bit later because I think he's a little bit slower when he gets there. But I think he is safe. I think there's a little bit of fuel saving going on. I don't know how much you can save around this track anyway. So as we see Kramer coming out of the pits, finds him a nice little slot to slot himself into back in P22. So yeah, I don't know that there's a lot of fuel saving that can be done here just because of the nature of the track. But I think he's trying to save as much as he can, even though that might not be maybe a half liter, something like that, over the course of that. But that might be enough to jump in from P3 to P1 if he has a good stop.
This is a fight right now outside of that top 3. Bobby West, who's been running in P4, I believe, ever since a green flag dropped. He's put together a pretty good race, as has Jason Green right behind him. Those two separated by about 0.3 of a second, with Dan Tess right in striking distance as well. We've got a 3-car pack here right towards the tail end of the top 6, so we'll see these 3 start to battle here. I gotta wonder, when it comes to these pack of cars, especially the one up towards the front, and even this pack of 3 cars here with West Green and Dan Tess, I wonder, will they come come in together, or are they actually going to split their strategies? I gotta imagine some drivers are going to try and push the bill just a little bit, get a bit more fuel out of it, run these fuel tanks dry, then they'll finally come into the pits. We'll just have to wait and see how things shake out. Nazelli, the story that we've been following ever since he came into the pits, really ever since a green flag came out, still running in P17. He's gotten past a few cars that have come in, has a massive gap between himself and Gradwell between P16 and P17. However, Gradwell and all the drivers, I believe, right in front of him haven't come into the pits. This is Paul Jackson exiting the pits in the number 249 car, so he's going to be exiting the pits farther in the back. I think we may have some drivers. We may see the front actually catch up to some lap traffic here. Vaglini is currently 1 minute and 2 seconds back of Castro, so we may see him get involved in the not too distant future as we're seeing some drivers inside the top 20 start to pit. It's going to allow Nazelli to start to claw his way through the field. Gardini, Carvalho, Jacobson, and Gradwell in as well, and Nazelli is going to blow their metaphorical doors off going down the start-finish straightaway. So I think now, as we're entering the second half of this race, is going to get really interesting, Charles.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, Naselli's already back up to 15th as these cars are coming in for their pit stop. And so he's within, looking at about a 30-second stoppage time, or not stoppage time, but about 30 seconds lost for the pit stop. And that's going to put him, I'm just doing some quick math here, somewhere around Dantas. Somewhere between Dantas and Fritcher. So we'll see how that all works out in the end there. So might be very interesting into the race here if he gets up into that second group.
This is going to be a really compelling race. It has been a compelling race so far, and there's so many twists and turns left for us to see. We're seeing some battling right outside the top 20. All these drivers battling all throughout the field, regardless of whether they're running outside the top 20, outside the top 10, or battling for the win. They still battle just as hard. It's always fantastic to see here. As a commentator, you always love seeing drivers give it absolutely everything they have. Nazelli now moving up to P14 as things stand at the moment. 25 minutes into this race as we see some more drivers pulling in. Stephen Mitchell now moving up to P21 right now in a we'll call it unique looking car, the number 917 there. I believe it was I wouldn't know how to describe the colors on that car, but very unique car, so to speak. But yeah. British military drab. I think me being from Philadelphia, I'd probably call it Delaware River Brown. But anyways, we will just ignore that and actually touch on some of the action that we have all throughout this field. Frichter, the Masters leader throughout a vast majority of this race, has now come in. So we're seeing the drivers inside the top 10 start to pull in. This is going to get real spicy here.
Yeah, this is going to be a good indicator of where Naselli's going to be once all the pit stops are done, because Frichter was running in that second group with West Green and Dantas are right around that area. So let's see where he comes out in relationship to Naselli. And it looks like it's going to be really close. And Naselli is by. So, all right. So that's going to be Naselli knocking on the door of that top 5 that we talked about earlier.
Gotta imagine that. I think Nazelli is probably one of the coolest stories that we've followed so far today, even including the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, just because he went for an off-the-wall strategy. I think there are only like 1 or 2 drivers that pitted in the first 15 minutes. He was one of them, and he's used it to a treat so far. However, he's still, he's running in P13, which is a great result, and he still has to wait for the drivers farther up the road to pit. I will say one thing, he isn't gaining time on Castro. He's been about 38 seconds back of the lead for a vast majority of the past like 10 minutes. However, he's not losing time either, so he's keeping pace with the drivers up towards the front of this field, which I think is very impressive. It's showing that Nazelli, if he started a little bit farther up the field, he would have been a driver that we need to keep our eye on this fight for the lead. Speaking of, you can see Tabino maybe tried to go for the move there on Castro. Tabino gets past Panero. We didn't see that. Hopefully, we may have to take a look at a replay to see Tabino actually pulling off that move to slot his way into P number 2. This is going on to the start-finish straightaway. just lightly kissing that inside water barrels of evil, so to speak, and Tabino just had a fantastic run, was in the draft, and gets the move done down the inside. Fairly textbook and convincing stuff there to pull off the move there on Panero, heading into turn number 1. I'm honestly shocked we've seen so many moves heading into turn 1, because just looking at that corner and how tricky it is, I was really expecting those drivers to avoid doing any sort of overtakes there into that turn with a 10-foot pull. However, these drivers having a lot more experience and practice here at this track than I do, them actually pushing the limits a little bit there.
Yeah, they are kind of cutting it close. Yeah, it's he's as we see Vaccaro in the pits. Yeah, he's done a great job, and so we'll just continue on and see as we're about. I think we're within 5 minutes or so of everybody having to come into pit. So the vast majority of the front group should be coming in, like I said, in the next 4 laps or so.
This is going to be really tense. Here's Gardini coming in as well. So for our own sake, Gardini and Favini are now separated on track. I can thank the racing gods for that. So Gardini coming in a little bit earlier than the other drivers running in the top 10. As things stand at the moment, midway through the pit cycle, Castro is still leading. Pretty much none of the S1 drivers, the top 9 still haven't come in, while the top 11 overall have not come in. Carvalho the leader in S2 as things stand at the moment. Brewster the leader in Masters, but we'll see. Will any of the drivers at the front come into the pits? None of them do. I gotta imagine these drivers will have to pit within the next few laps. I think, Charles, earlier on in this broadcast, you said that last time out, these drivers were stretching it to about 34 minutes on a single tank of gas. So are we seeing actually better fuel saving here, considering there's less time spent on full throttle, considering we're bypassing that first turn on the oval?
Yeah, I think that might have something to do with it, as we, because obviously you're gonna lift going into that turn 1, that old north oval, turns 1 and 2 of the NASCAR circuit, and then you're just gonna get back on the throttle, and it was pretty much full throttle all the way around. So I think, yeah, the change in the configuration probably gives them a little better fuel mileage. I don't know how much, because we're not talking about big sections of the track. We're talking about one small section. So, but yeah, it's got to be within the next 3 laps or so. I would expect to see the rest of the drivers in.
This is going to be a madhouse between now and the checkered flag. Less than 10 minutes left to go here in this race, and I'm getting flashbacks to the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors at Sebring not very long ago. There's Dudu Castro and Panero coming into the pits right as I was going to say that I was getting flashbacks to that, where we may see some drivers pit on the final 2 laps of the race. We see the driver that's pretty much led ever since about 10 minutes into this race. He comes in along with Panero, your pole sitter. So those two coming down pit road. Tabino breaking away, so we'll see what he can do staying out a lap later. We'll just have to wait and see how long these drivers spend in the pits. I have to say, Frister, only 8.4 second stop when he came in not very long ago, so that's a pretty good stop there from the driver who was leading in Masters. And you look at this, that's Panero getting out ahead of Castro. They're going to be side by side heading into the chicane, turn number 2, and it ends in tears as Castro makes contact there with Panero as they went through the turn 1 and 2 section. We mentioned again, we said it probably 15 times so far this broadcast, that the pit exit was going to be a source of trouble. We weren't expecting it from 2 cars exiting the pits at the same time, but shows you that both of those drivers were fighting as hard as they could, and sadly they come to blows as they drive through the Porsche pace car. Castro had a fantastic run there. He tried to stick it down the inside, but Panero just had more speed, and Castro, I think that was a bit of a move of desperation, if I'm being honest, from the Brazilian. He was seeing his chances at taking a comfortable win, slowly disappear. Panero, I think, just had a much, did he have a quicker stop there? I'm not too sure how exactly it looked at, because I think, from my looks at least, Dudu Castro actually got out first, then Panero got out second, but regardless, Panero actually had a better run and left the pits with the lead, but still Dudu Castro spinning his way like a top. I think those tires are probably rectangles on that Spec Racer Ford now, but still, that is a whole lot of drama that we weren't really expecting. Tabino is now going to exit the pits, and I thought he was going to be behind both Panero and Castro. He's now exiting in P number 8 there between those two, so Castro really getting called out in that pit cycle.
Yeah, so this is interesting that he came out where he did. I'm just going to look at the live timing and scoring here. So there's just enough gap between those cars. Castro's got to do a little bit of work, but if those cars get back in that 1 second in that draft range, they'll be together again, and then the gloves are off at that point. So yeah, that was a very. It was basically two drivers with two different lines coming out of the pit exit, and they ended up meeting as we see Vaccaro catching that inside curb, loses the car, catches it, nicely done. It's a nice catch, nice save, kept himself out of the wall. So if these cars get close enough together that they can get a draft on each other and they get back, nose to tail, it's going to be fireworks. Is my prediction.
Speaking of fireworks, it was, again, it's very similar to the front three that came in, had two come in on one lap and then one come in the next. We're seeing it again with that three-pack that we saw farther towards the tail end of the top five. Bobby West came in along with Dantas. However, Bobby West has gone out much quicker. Dantas stopped for 12.3 seconds. That is a dreadful stop there, so he was dropping back like a rock. That's unfortunate for the driver of the number 32 car that he had a very slow stop. And currently Green, who is involved in that fight as well, is your leader of the race. However, the top four have not come in. Christian Kabanka currently running in P3, who we haven't even mentioned, I believe, throughout this entire broadcast. He's put together a pretty quiet race, hasn't put a foot wrong all throughout it, knowing like I probably just jinxed it, and we're going to see him spinning like a top in the not too distant future, but he's running a nice little pack right now. That's Favini right ahead of him. Green has now come into the pit, so we'll see if Favini and Kabanka follow him in here as they go through turn number 11 and 12 here. Will they make that veering right-hand turn? Actually, no, it's a left-hand turn that Kabanka now makes. So pitting from P3 is the driver from the Philippines, I believe. I believe that's the I believe that is the Filipino flag. So actually got that correct there. Yippee to me. But anyways, Christian Kabanka in the number 78 car pulling into his box. And at this stage, it's still Favini and Meyer who've not come in, and Pinero, as long as all these drivers come into the pits, it will be Pinero being the presumptive leader of the race, having a decent gap between himself and Tabino there in net P1 and P2. So as things stand at the moment, I don't think we're going to get a grandstand finish for the lead of the race. However, we have to see how long Favini and Meyer can actually stretch their fuel for.
I gotta believe they're coming in this lap. It's the 35-minute mark. I don't see them being able to go much beyond that. It would be I would be shocked if they went beyond this lap. So we'll just have to wait and see. Because I've been shocked before. So it's, but I feel like this is probably the absolute limit of how far these cars can go on the fuel that they have. There we go.
I'm trying to think of how this. Oh, yeah, sorry, Charles.
No, it's okay. Mayer stayed out, so colored me half shocked. Favini came in, Mayer stayed out to do another lap.
So that's a little bit surprising, the fact that Meyer is still stretching out his fuel just a teeny tiny bit. He is going to be running on fumes. I can imagine that car is sputtering even now, so we'll see him go into turn number 4 and 5. I have to give credit where credit's due. We haven't really talked about Simon Meyer throughout this broadcast so far. However, he's done numbers in that number 5 car there. The fact he's still in the lead of the race, he will have to pit eventually, so it's not going to be him taking the checkered flag unless he just decides to stay out and will probably incur a post-race penalty. Actually, I say that the gap between himself and Pinero is nothing. You can see Pinero closing up and getting the move done there. So Pinero moving into P number 1, and now you can see Tabino actually sliding around the outside, going through turn number 9, gets the move done as well. Turn 9, a section with no margin for error. You have a grass hill for a runoff area, and that grass hill just basically leads to an endless void here in iRacing. So those two drivers putting on some pretty good moves to actually negotiate that, I wouldn't call him a lap car of Meyer. He was a presumptive leader of the race, and he's now come into the pits. So currently, as things stand at the moment, with not a whole lot of time left to go, Pinero leads, Tabino is in second, and Castro is in P3. I wonder, will Tabino have enough time and have enough pace over Pinero to actually challenge him for the lead?
Yeah, I think he's going to catch him now. Whether or not he's got the pace to pass him, Tabino's been. To be fair, he's had a really good a good string of races in both this and the Formula Ford this season. So he's definitely got pace in the car. Now, whether or not he can get by Pinero, that's a completely different story as we see Meyer coming out of the pits. But if they start battling, that's going to bring Castro up there as well, and that's going to make things it's going to make things crazy at that point. So just a check in very quickly. Naselli is a half second behind Bobby West, and that'll be the battle for P5.
There we go. We haven't even touched base on that as we saw the leaders come in. So Nazelli, it was I mean, this has been a fantastic race for Nazelli, it must be said. I'll take a look at my live timing screen to actually know. Our producer Josh pulls it up immediately as I'm saying it, up 24 positions from where he started. Credit where credit's due to the German of Nazelli. That is a fantastic race that he's put together thus far, and it's still not over yet. I think he may have a run here to try and get past West going down the start-finish straightaway. He may see the... Actually, no, that's a lapped car there. My apologies for that. That's a number 921 car. I'm not sure who exactly that was. So Nazelli currently, I think... I'm not sure what exactly the gap is between himself and the drivers farther up inside the top 5. So I think Nazelli may have to settle for P6, as I think we may be taking the white flag this time by. But still, Nazelli up 24 positions from where he started is incredibly impressive there. So I think even if he doesn't break into the top 5, credit where credit's due to the German. The fact he's still running inside the top 10 is quite impressive considering where he started. Meanwhile, Marco Pinero coming through turn number 10. I'm honestly surprised that we haven't seen any drivers get called out and launched by that curb of turn number 10 so far. I was giving my dad a pseudo track guide before this broadcast, and I pretty much said, yeah, we're going to see a driver get sent into low Earth orbit there. However, we haven't seen it thus far, knowing my luck, Marco Pinero is going to strike the moon if he hits that curb this time by. However, Marco Pinero has taken the white flag. We have about a minute left to go on the clock. One lap here from New Hampshire Motor Speedway on the road course. Bobby West is currently the last driver inside that top 5, and he's involved in a nice fight with himself and Green heading into turn number 1. Frischter has come into the pits from the lead of the Masters category. That's bizarre there, so hopefully he can come out before Nunez overtakes him. Is it fuel? It must be a fuel issue.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and keep my eye on him to see exactly where he ends up. That would be an unfortunate way for his race to end in the dying stages of this race. He has to come in for fuel, underfueled it just a little bit, and sadly for him, if his chances of winning in Masters get derailed by that, that'd be a shame there for a driver who's put together a good race. Bobby West is putting on a good challenge here, trying to battle with Green. However, he's just running out of time to move up into P4. Speaking of running out of time, Pinero is very close to Bino. These two drivers, you can cover them with a blanket, but I think Tabino is just not going to have enough time. He runs a little bit wide coming out of the second to last corner, and it will be Marco Pinero, your pole sitter, who didn't lead the most amount of laps. However, he leads the one that matters the most. Marco Pinero wins, and Tabino there, only 0.3 of a second separating those two as they cross the start finish line to end off this 40-minute race. And Castro runs at your podium in third. Green holds off in that fight between himself and West there out towards the tail end of the top 5. Man, Tabino, if he had one lap, I think he probably would have gotten the move done. He may have gotten the move done heading into turn number 1 if they had one more lap there. So Tabino, I think even though he came up just a little bit short, you gotta give some credit to him for actually prevailing in that fight. Kurt Nunez is now the leader of the Masters category as Philip Berry takes a checkered flag, the top of the drivers in S2, and Kurt Nunez wins in Masters after Frischter came into the pits in the dying stages of the race. That is heartbreak for the driver, the number 943 car. That is a shame for that race to end. However, it must be said from our perspective in the commentary booth, that was a pretty freaking good race as far as I'm concerned. What do you think, Charles?
Yeah, you know, it's just, you know, like for a track that doesn't get ran very much, it's a fun little track. You know, it's obviously it's a little bit of a challenge because it's a new track it's an old track that doesn't get used, so that means it's a new track for all the drivers. But yeah, it's you know, second time, 2 seasons, and it's been some exciting battles up in the front, and good battles all the way around from each category.
I'll tell you what, that race was so dramatic and interesting that I didn't even get a chance to drink my water throughout a vast majority of this race. I think I know what we may be seeing. I saw a little bit of the Spec Racer Ford race here last time and we may see some drivers attempting the pseudo jump. Sadly, the jump at Bathurst no longer a thing with a reworked gravel physics here in iRacing, so we may see some drivers lining up. Maybe they're just like forming a mock car show here in turn number 4. You can see the jagged tire barriers there. Good lord, the skin is old of this track, and now we can see the drivers rolling. Will they go for the jump here? It's the saddest jump in the world, but all of them are going for it, and bang, lawn dart Jason Green has a 14 bajillion G impact as we see cars flying all over the track. I cannot help myself from laughing at this absurd sight. Spec Racer Ford cars. Oh man, it is Oh no, it's a graveyard of Spec Racer Fords. Thankfully they're in the sim, so they didn't suffer life-changing injuries from that, but I feel bad from laughing. But they all took the checkered flag, they all had a good race, and they wanted to blow off a little steam after that. And as we look, I believe we're looking into the void of some of the cars that were flipped over in that, just seeing the Blackie Ghoul Doom underneath New Hampshire Motor Speedway. And wow, I think I'm gonna try and get this back on track, and try and collect myself after seeing that absurd sight. That looked ridiculous. If anyone has a problem with me laughing, you try and keep a straight face seeing a bunch of Spec Racer Ford cars dang all around like some weird stop motion animation from like the 1950s or something, but still. Oh man, Michelle Lynn put it best in the YouTube chat. The Dukes of Hazzard theme better have been playing with that. Sadly, I don't think we can play the Dukes of Hazzard theme here on Apex, but I think if we could, we definitely would, because that's the best way to round off a pretty good day of racing action, it must be said, Charles.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a great race. It's you know, not like I said, it's a little used circuit, but it always seems like it produces some really good racing. And you know, we had a lot more incidents last season than we did this season. So hats off to the drivers for doing the prep work and getting everything ready. And you know, obviously 31's it's a pretty low number for us here at the Weekend Warriors, and it's just because I don't think a lot of people have this track. You know what? We'll take the week off. We'll come back next week and drive something else as we get a nice replay of the cars dismembering themselves from this little jump here.
That is absolutely majestic. Oh boy, I will try and refrain from laughing any harder than I have already. There are very few things I've seen on a broadcast that have made me laugh as much as this. Oh man, my brain is fried from doing 2 of these Weekend Warriors broadcasts, and I still have 1 more broadcast left to go here on Apex Racing TV before the day is out, and we're just waiting for some more drivers to go into the interview waiting area so we can have a chat with them. But I think before we do that, we should take a look at the results here from the Spec Racer Ford race here at New Hampshire. An interesting race for sure, a lot of nice strategy thrown in as well. That's a result from qualifying. It was Marco Panera at the front of the qualifying and Marco Panera at the front of the race. He takes the checkered flag. Less than 0.3 of a second between himself and Joao Tabino there, so that was an incredibly close fight by the time they took the checkered flag. Then Dudu Castro rounds out your podium there in 3rd. Jason Green and Bobby West ran out your top 5 there, involved in a nice fight. Driver of the day, I think, would probably have to go to Nazelli, who put on a overtaking masterclass, up 24 positions from where he started this race, finishes this race in 6th. That is very impressive for the German driver to finish only 16 seconds back of your winner Panera. That's going to be Evandro Dantas finishing in 7th, Favini there in P number 8, Simon Mayer there in 9th, Christian Kabanka in 10th, Trenton Kramer in P11. That's Philip Berry, the top of the drivers in the S2 category. He takes the checkered flag there, P1 in class and P12 overall. That's Claudio Gradini there in P13. Kurt Nunez, in a very shocking turn of events, takes a checkered flag at the top of the Masters. That's a very impressive run there from the American in the number 918 car. That's Jeff Jacobson running at your top 15 with Jeff Frischter, who has to be kicking himself after that very late pit stop that cost him the win in the Masters category. Tom Gradwell there in P17, Brad Cathcart in 18th, Ellen McCain in 19th, and Jim Brewster running at your top 20.
Yeah, 21st, Pedro Carvalho, Manning Grennan in 22nd, Paul Jackson 23rd, 24th is Stephen Mitchell, Adam Bradshaw in 25th, Charlie Vaccaro in 26th, Gianni Longett in 27th, Michelle Viglini in 28th. We continue on, Russ Telker in 29th, Wayne Buttermore in 30th, and rounding out your 31 car field is Marcus Burkett.
I think I kind of lied towards the start of this broadcast when I said this track here of New Hampshire is nothing like anything that we'll see throughout the rest of the season. I am kind of, it is a little bit of a lie, because later on this season we'll be visiting the Roval of Phoenix on May the 12th. And speaking of the schedule, next up is VIR on April the 14th, and I think it's going to be nothing like what we saw here at New Hampshire. Drafting will be the name of the game, and we actually have a little bit of experience, myself, Charles, and Josh have with that competition. combination, as we saw that with the Ray Esports Racing League this past Tuesday. Speaking of, Ray Esports is going to be back here on Apex Racing TV this upcoming Tuesday at the Sebring Club layout, where the Formula Cars and the Spec Mazdas are going to be doing battle. That's going to be a pretty interesting race in a couple of days' time, but VIR next time out here for the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors. I think that's going to be a pretty damn good race. What do you think, Charles?
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's, it's like I said, it's a little bit of a, a different layout. So it's something new. But, it's Sebring, so we're going to have a good time, and it'd be good to get the Mazdas on track and see them as well.
Well, if you want to stay up to date of all the things going on here on Apex Racing TV, remember to hit the subscribe button. When I said Super Sunday at the start of this broadcast and the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, I was not lying. I think this is the single most amount of broadcast that Apex has had in a single day. We had earlier today the Racing Unleashed Challenge at Watkins Glen, along with the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors that we just had about an hour before this broadcast started, the Radical Sim Racing European Championship at Watkins Glen. We currently have the Champion Motorsports iRacing Team Endurance Series currently going on, that 7-hour race, that 7-hour classic round 5 of their season at Le Mans that's still ongoing and will be ongoing for a couple of more hours. And then we're going to have the Radical Sim Racing Americas Championship here, round 3 of the season at Watkins Glen. I'll be part of that broadcast as well. We've got action all around the clock here on Apex Racing TV, so you better hit the subscribe button. You better stay tuned in, because we have got some of the best iRacing events on the platform here on Apex Racing TV, and they're all being broadcasted by some pretty decent broadcasters and some okay commentators. But I think for the stream here from the Formula Ford and the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors, this Super Sunday here on Apex Racing TV, I am out of breath from the great racing that we had here this Sunday, and we're going to see some even better racing in 1 week's time. So if you want to stay up to date, hit that subscribe button, notification bell, you know what to do. So I think for this broadcast, for this edition of the Weekend Warriors, that'll just about do it. So for myself, Ron Mullins, Charles Bichelle joining me in the commentary booth, and Josh Wilkie working all the cameras of the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you all again for Super Sunday in 1 week's time.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.